All right, hello everybody. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to start things off so that we can get things rolling. I'm going to begin with welcoming you all. Happy Women's History Month and International Women's Day. My name is Jess Sudich. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. Hey. So the Wakefield Human Rights Commission acknowledges that the land we now call Wakefield are the ancestral homelands of the Massachusetts people, who have been the caretakers of the unceded land for centuries and will continue to be for centuries to come. We are settlers. The Massachusetts people have been tirelessly striving for human rights, even in the face of land theft, genocide, and forced removal. The work we do to build a more unified, equal, and diverse community grows out of the efforts, leadership, and guidance of countless Native communities. We commit to honoring this continued Native activism as we do our work. In doing so, we dedicate time in our meetings throughout the year to help educate those in the community about the Native people of Massachusetts, past, present, and their work towards the future. We stand with the Massachusetts Indigenous Legislative Agenda in celebrating Indigenous Peoples' Day in place of Columbus Day. Now, during the month of March, Women's History Month, the Wakefield Historical Society is publishing the biographies of some Wakefield prominent women from the earliest settlers. By the end of the month, all of the biographies will be published on the blog page of the Society's website. That is www.wakefieldhistory.org. Nope. Today we'd like to feature Harriet Flint, a very generous and charitable woman who was born and brought up on Salem Street in Wakefield. Do you have the next here? You flip. I don't usually do slides, so it's new for me. I'm not usually the reader. I do improv. Miss Harriet Flint, a very generous and charitable woman who was born and brought up on Salem Street in Wakefield. Mrs. Flint is best known for her bequest of $10,000 for the purpose of erecting a monument to the memory of the soldiers and sailors who had taken part in the Civil War. Mrs. Flint had long been a supporter of veterans' causes and had donated furnishings for the War Memorial Room in the Old Town Hall. Her donation for a monument specified that the monument be grand in itself, symmetrical in architecture, beautiful in design and finish, attended with solid and thorough workmanship, and worthy of the brave men to whom we dedicate it. The resulting Soldiers and Sailors Monument on the Upper Common, originally dedicated in 1902, has been restored and will be rededicated on May 31st, and all are invited to attend. Now, without further ado, I want to bring up the wonderful women who are on our panel today. Please come on up. I'm so excited that all of you were able to attend. They are far more brilliant than I am, and so it will be lovely to hear from them. You're right, I'm also so brilliant. But they are really doing the work out there, and I think it will be inspirational to hear some of their thoughts today on some of these questions, and this will all be hosted by Sherry Oken, and I will bring you up now.
Oh, no, I'm good. This is not an improv prop. This is a necessity. I'm sorry I can't shake anybody's hands. I am really honored to serve as moderator for this year's panel. Believe me when I say that there's a lot to know and learn from these women, incredible women, and their experiences. But in the interest of time, I'm only going to provide a little teaser, that's a throat lozenge, teaser bio and introduction to encourage you, if you haven't already, to pick up one of those sheets on the front table that has way more detailed bios about each of them. I'm going to start with Katrina. As Deputy Director at the Electric Privacy Information Center, known as EPIC, in Washington, D.C. It's a nonprofit research and advocacy center. Katerina is one of the nation's leading advocates for privacy, regulation of AI, that's a hot button issue, and accountability for social media platforms. Somehow, she also finds time to serve as the vice chair of the Wakefield Democratic Town Committee and other committees. The epitome of ask a busy person. Linda Snow Doxer. She wears many hats: educator, strategic program and event planner, community mobilizer, writer, fundraiser, and she has a passion for nurturing connections and mentoring. Her work empowers diverse cross-generational stakeholders to mobilize around community needs and social justice. Liliana Patino, who has a master's degree in mental health counseling, serves as the Senior Director of Community Impact and Development for the Elliott Community Health Human Services. She has spent her entire career advocating for multiple communities with diverse cultural backgrounds and for families, including first-time parents. Reverend Dr. Suzanne Intriligator, did I get it right? Yep. Okay, is the minister for the Melrose UU Church, and she's been an activist since she was in her 20s, and someone who truly acts on her principles. Case in point, she's been arrested twice recently. As a minister in a progressive faith tradition, she supports organizers who work in anti-racism, immigration, voting rights, and climate justice. Saratine Rizzuto. She's the vice president and relationship manager and community relations for the Metro Credit Union. Now you say, Metro Credit Union? She's a banker. But she's had a really distinguished career in not-for-profit sector for over 30 years, supporting all kinds of charitable initiatives, advocating for civil rights, and uplifting communities. The extent of her community involvement and the number of things that she has championed, the list is so long that it would take the whole program to tell you. And finally, last but not least, Laura Wilson. She's an author, an activist, a mom, and the chairperson of Pop Huddle, an indivisible chapter that serves Reading. If you don't know, POP stands for Powerful Individual People, of which she is certainly one, having planned and led very specific actions to take action against bigotry on the local, state, and federal levels. This is quite the panel. Now, the theme, accelerate action. The need to accelerate action has starting points, or as Malcolm Gladwell said, tipping points. So my first question, and this is for all the panelists, is, what was the first step, your first step into community action? In other words, what changes or incidents inspired you, the tipping points, and propelled you to action? And anyone who wants to can speak up and speak first. And I know you're all prepared. Okay, should I assign someone? Linda, okay.
Get over the nerves faster. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I guess you can hear me. What I wanted to first say is never underestimate the power of role models and the empowerment of youth. I'm an example. And the other thing I really wanted to stress was relationship, relationship, relationship. That's how things happen. That's how things change. In junior high school, my parents were active. They went to town meeting in Marblehead. They had many opportunities to vote, often not successfully, on new schools. I saw them doing that in high school. My parents were active in my temple. I got onto my youth group. We raised money and collected food for the food pantry. We paid for all of our own activities. I was very active with that. My parents then adopted a Soviet family, a Jewish family that was trapped in Russia. And one by one, they brought the family over. And we were able to teach them how to use the supermarkets. We were able to have them to our holidays, and for the first time, they were free to celebrate as Jews from their homes. And that was really inspiring, which led me to work for Soviet Jewry and make phone calls to Russia from Governor Dukakis's and Senator Markey's office. I don't think he was senator then, but it was very inspiring. But then my turnabout to local, and I'll make this faster. My turnabout to local was when I lived in Wakefield, actually, and I cared very much about my kids going into smoky restaurants. And there was a bill to take smoking and tobacco out of restaurants. And that was my first time in Wakefield in front of town meetings speaking out, and it passed. We got tobacco out, and Richard Burchill, a past school committee member here, saw me, called me, and said, Linda, we have an override coming up. Will you please help us and speak out? And that was my first foray into overrides and trying to make a difference locally. So I have other things here that launched me, but those things were really pivotal in getting me involved and giving me a local voice.
Saratine?
Thank you first and foremost to Jess and the Human Rights Commission for having us. And I'm just happy to be sitting here before so many powerful women, like-minded powerful women. So I have to say that when I was in high school, that was the first time that I became active in something that truly inspired me and changed my life, I want to say, for the better. And it was a situation where our vice principal, that was extremely active in the school and very inspiring himself, was going to lose his job. And they were letting him go. There were 2 vice principals. And I started talking to the other students because everybody seemed to be sad about the news that he was going to lose his job. And we started just, I don't know who brought it up, but someone was like, well, maybe we can just, rally against his being fired. And I was like, well, that's a great idea. Let's, how do we do that though? Like, what does that mean exactly? And one of the teachers got involved and pretty much helped us put together a plan. And I have to say that it started with just, 3 or maybe 4 of us students, and it ended up being, and I was a freshman then, and it ended up being what seemed like the entire school that was marching towards City Hall from, I went to Dorchester High School, and it was like in Codman Square. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that area, but it's quite the walk. And I remember it like it was yesterday. For the first time in my life, I felt heard. And most importantly, I felt seen. And I mean, we couldn't stop the letting go of this vice principal, but it did, expose me to other people, and people wanted to work with some of us that led this march, and I got involved in other things in the community, and that is when I knew that I just wanted to be involved in community work, in activism. I was exposed to a lot that was going on in the world, in the area at the time, rather, that seemed, unjust, and I wanted to make a difference. So that was the beginning of everything and what inspired me to continue to do the work that I do today.
Thank you. Laura, how about you?
Hi. Mine was definitely I had very similar experiences, high school and college, and having those kinds of, experiences. But really, the tipping point for me of really focusing my attention and where it really went from like a thought exercise of this is what I feel and I feel outrage about it, but never really did that much about it, was in 2017. I went to the Women's March, and one of the things they just kept saying after every speech, like, well, this is great you're here, and it's great to see, Amy Schumer and Madonna, but, what are you going to do when you get home? And so to me, that was a big thing, and I came home and started my organization, and we started with 28 people, and we're 750 today, so that's wonderful. And then really just realizing how much work there was to be done, even on the local level. I kind of took it for granted as Massachusetts. We're like, oh, this is a blue state. Like, we don't have those problems here. And then I went to a select board meeting and was shocked to see the misogyny and the discounting and the devaluing of women that those particular gentlemen used when they were speaking to women. Shocked me, frankly, and it really careened me into campaigning and figuring out, like, how do we have people in representative government that represent our values, and that's what catapulted me into all of this.
Okay. Liliana?
Sure.
She
I
picked
can
up the
go
mic.
next.
She's ready.
Thank you. I think that sometimes we start doing activism not even knowing that we're doing it. And I think that for me, many years ago, I used to work at a preschool. And the reason why I started working at a preschool was because one of my children was so active that no one wanted to take care of him. So I remember I started working at a preschool, and many times I witnessed parents struggling. And usually when I see someone struggling, I go and ask why, like what's happening, how can I support you? So I think it started in a very organic way, kind of asking questions, looking for resources, looking for support, and acknowledging that we all need help. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, we all need help. So I kind of like took it under my arm to be the voice or those that cannot speak regardless of whatever your situation is. And one thing took me into the other. So it wasn't only how can I support you, but where can I get the help? I think that we need to be empathetic, and empathy to me means solutions. So I started working in different nonprofits and working in different organizations, and I heard relationships. That's very important. We all know what happens when you know someone who can support you and can help you and can give you ideas. So I think that for me, that was it. Maybe it was a need that I had with my own family, and then I saw it in other people, and I wanted to help.
Suzanne,
So the question is, what first inspired us?
what was the tipping point, the thing that really catapulted you into activism?
The answer that comes to me first is when I was back in college in the 1980s, there was a Take Back the Night March, and it helped me to realize just how the deep-seated anger that I held, that women are not safe to walk the streets at night, we're not safe being alone, that we need to keep our keys between our hands at all times, that we face sexual harassment and violence in so many different facets. And so I went on that, and I felt a surge of energy and connection with all the other people, and I thought, oh, this is the energy that I want to be part of in my life, and I want to feel like I'm making a contribution. And so I joined the editorial page of my college newspaper, and I got to learn, I became a journalist, and from there I worked at Ms. Magazine in New York City in the 90s. I was an editor there for 5 years. So I did a lot of work in international feminism, national feminism, went to a lot of, and I got to be sort of at the center of that for 5 years, and that was an amazing experience, but it was also really exhausting. So after that, I was looking for a vision of what would happen, people who are, what would a post-feminist future actually look like? That's how I ended up in the church, because I felt like it was a place where people were following their values and hopefully treating one another better and dreaming of the next world where things were actually fair. And that, to me, felt a little bit more nurturing in the long run. So that's a little bit of my story.
And Katerina?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question. I can't think of like one moment, but instead I feel like it's kind of always been, I guess it was part of how I was growing up, which is funny because I'm a child of immigrants. My parents weren't citizens till I was a teenager, so it's not like political activism was part of our lives, but I was raised really Irish Catholic, and that community really like took care of each other. And I remember, from a young age, being at the food pantry at the church and being part of like, church activities where if someone needed help, we'd help. And I guess that was always just ingrained into me to like spread kindness. And so it's something I'm always mindful of now, especially with my kids, because I'm not part of organized religion anymore, and I'm not raising them in a church. trying to make sure that we're talking about that and we're finding ways to show them ways to spread kindness.
I'm sure all of you have your own moments as well. And certainly those of us older people who remember the 60s really well and the 70s really well, there were too many moments. Next question. If someone really wants to make a difference, but they don't know how to begin, what would you suggest to them? Where to begin? Where do you start? Small ways that they can figure out how to get involved.
I'm last, I'll go first this time. I'd say pick your issue. You can't fix all the problems, especially right now. So find your issues that you care about, and then find other people that care about those issues. It's so much easier to take collective action or to be motivated when you have other people to do it with. So find your issue and find your people.
Now, not everyone has to answer every question, but that would be great if you did. Okay.
I'll be pretty brief, but this one is probably my favorite of the questions, so I wanted to make sure I get on this one. A big thing for me is we as humans, we love a style, right? We have learning styles for school. We have love languages for our relationships. We love a Myers-Briggs personality test, right? I would love it if, maybe I should develop it, maybe that's the thing I should do next, but is a personality test for action and for activism. What works for you, and sort of to really what you were saying, it totally is true, find your issue, find your people, but even more specifically, it's like try to find the thing that you feel like you can do and you can work into your life, because if you just, if you're a breastfeeding mom and you cannot possibly get out of the house, it's not going to be your jam to go to protests, right? But you can make phone calls while you're nursing, and you can maybe write postcards depending on your positioning. And there's ways you can get involved, right? There's ways you can still do that. A socially anxious person maybe isn't going to go to meetings and get super socially involved, but maybe they can do social media for some organization locally. Or a person who is, burnt out from a hard day's work, comes home and really needs to watch their Bachelor, maybe they get a pile of postcards and they write postcards while they're, watching their mindless TV. It's mindless writing a script down. It's very easy. So find the thing that works with your life that you can really work into your life, because like a workout routine or like any new habit you're trying to put into your life, if it doesn't fit, it won't stay. So that would be my advice.
I want to add also, reach out to people in your own community. I reached out to Maureen when I was trying to determine what would be my next community involvement, and it ended up 5 years ago being the HRC.
This is a question that I was eager to answer as well, because I think it's important for us to recognize that what's happening in our nation's capital right now is unfathomable, and it's a great opportunity to take action. As Katrina mentioned, find the thing that you're most passionate about, and it's really a very volatile time in the political climate right now. So I think just find what you're passionate about. Don't despair. Don't become a target either. Do work behind the scenes, organize, find your allies in your community. I have some of my allies here that are here to support women, and there are allies in your community, like-minded allies in your community that will help you get started. And so, yeah, that's my answer.
Suzanne.
And I would just add, don't be afraid to go to a meeting. You can go to a Zoom meeting. 2 years ago, I'm very passionate about climate justice. I joined Extinction Rebellion Boston, which is a pretty radical climate justice group, but they have roles at all different levels. There's postcarding, there's art making, there's designing activist events, and then even when you go to one of those, there's different levels of involvement. So you can choose to bring snacks, and you don't have to be the person who gets arrested. All of that is planned in advance, and everybody gets to choose their level of participation. So you don't need to fear that you're going to be pushed into something uncomfortable right away. It's very easy to just, dip a toe in very many different places and see what fits.
So much has been said that was on my list. But I want to underscore that little things matter. That if what you have bandwidth to do right now is watch a virtual meeting or go to a meeting, it matters because that will feed you in conversations. Who you meet at those meetings makes a difference. I just recently went to the ADL's conference on the Good Fight, which is directed to K through 12. I didn't know how I was going to use the information, really. I did know I was going to use it for developing curriculum for preschoolers. But aside from that, I didn't know how I was going to bring it back to my town. And when I got home, I wrote it up. I wrote up summaries. I had gotten extra booklets. And I brought them to all the leaders, the administrators in our town, the schools, the town, and anybody I thought that might be able to apply what I had learned and what was right there on their website for everybody to access. And that way, the little thing I did, I took one evening and went to a conference. I wrote it down and I handed it out. And it makes a difference. Even if you don't come home and do something like that, the people you meet when you go to a meeting might be involved in something you're interested in, and that will be your, would you call it a trigger point?
Tipping point.
So you never know what's going to happen next or how you're going to be empowered. Be open to that. Being kind to the next person next to you. Those things really matter. You just don't know what's going to make the difference.
And Linda actually just provided a segue into my next question, which she just answered, which is I was going to ask each of you if you can share an example of a change that your activism has brought to your more immediate community, something more personal. Yes, I see.
Sure, I can just go into it.
Yes.
So one of the communities I was working with, it's a community of color, and we noticed that many parents were struggling with diapers. We all know how diapers, they are so expensive, and we know how many diapers babies need, especially when they are sick and they're growing too fast. And that was a need that we knew. Like anytime that we were talking to parents, it was like diapers, diapers, diapers. So we started looking into different options. Like, should we write a grant? Should we reach out to different organizations that maybe can provide diapers? And I started calling a lot of the people that actually were doing the same in different communities. Like, where are you getting them? And we were very lucky to find a partner. Again, partners, right? Relationships, who's doing it already. And this specific partner allow us to receive a huge amount of diapers every single month. So we are able to support 500 families a month with diapers. And I know, it's excited. And the credit goes to the whole team that works with me, not only making those connections, but working on supporting the families, working on doing the distribution, working on the implementation, getting the families there and knowing that you're coming to us not only for the diapers, but you're coming for the emotional connection. You're coming because we see you. We're coming because we respect you, and we are able to support you with many other questions that you might have. So that is one that, again, it was a need, and together with the team I work with, we were able to come up with an amazing plan.
So you don't have to move mountains. You just have to move cartons of diapers to make a difference.
I can go next. Reading had, in 2020, we started the Pride Parade and have had 5 years. We're having our 5th year this year. Very excited about that. And in the last 4 years, we've also written over 100,000 postcards to register voters and to get out the vote in a variety of campaigns across the country.
Would anyone else like to? Aha, okay. Katrina.
I don't have the bandwidth to run for local office myself right now, but I have recruited people to run for local office because filling those local positions, the school committee positions, the town council positions, the lesser known, library trustees, all of the board, is with people who share your values is so important. So that is something I'm very proud of.
Sarah-Jean?
On a more local level, I started an initiative called Celebrate Literacy Day that it's a group of volunteers that raises funds essentially for nonprofits in the area of education, that we pretty much raise money for these organizations that don't have a person that does development work to help them do more in the community when it comes to education. And then with my job, I also, along with my team, started initiative that pretty much went into emerging populations and immigrant communities and learning what is keeping them from creating wealth, saving money, and helping close the wealth gap by either creating products that work for them, that they would be more familiar, that's more like the products that the banks that they trust in their countries had, and just being able to come together with experts in the community to provide the information and be able to organize together. And then internationally, through our local Rotary Club, the Chelsea Rotary Club, that's the city I work out of, as president, we started to raise funds to build a well in an indigenous village in Colombia and raise enough money to buy the truck that digs the hole, that digs 100 feet into the earth so that the water, I learned so much through that initiative, but that didn't only help that village, but they were able to let the surrounding villages utilize this very expensive truck or device that digs this hole. And so many of these communities, as a result of these Rotarians coming together and raising funds, have water now in their villages and are able to raise crops and et cetera. So yeah, those are a few of the things that I've done.
Okay. I think
in a team.
Suzanne, Linda, who's first?
I just wanted to say, people have done amazing, huge projects here, but often these projects, the essence is just connecting people. That's what organizing is. It's just connecting people. So, I noticed recently that a lot of people in my church are very, very upset about what's happening in Washington right now. So we just shared an email list, made something we call a pro-democracy team, and so whenever one of us hears about a boycott or a protest, we just share it with everybody, and then we carpool and we go together, and it's just a seed, but it's so much more powerful, and we're able to do something right away, right now, without waiting for a larger national organization to coalesce.
And have the comfort of like-minded people.
Relationships, relationships, relationships. One of the things that has fed me and has made a difference in our town has been the Pillars of Character program that I started at our elementary school. It was a program to teach children how to value trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, citizenship, and caring. It was an example of someone that was not looking for something to do. I had a baby in a holder, and I had 2 boys that were 19 months apart. Didn't know that I had the bandwidth to do anything else, but the PTO came up to me with these 6 pillars and said, can you do a program for us for this year? And I'm an educator, and I said, no, I will not do it for this year, but if you give me permission to build a program that will last a long time, then I will do that. And they gave me permission. It's still going now. That's about 29 years. And it just fed me. I did it for 8 years. I turned it over to someone else. It was very collaborative. I got to know all the teachers. I worked with the children. We honored pillars of our community, so we made sure that people in our community knew about the program. They knew about what was happening in the schools. We brought in our cable. A thank you to cable TV networks, because they make programs and information accessible for everyone when they're available. I can't thank you guys enough.
And this is being simulcast, so there are people at home watching this.
And Reading RCTV has been amazing. They used to take our videotapes and play them so that children could watch their assemblies. There were 7 a year. And watch the assemblies at home with their parents to share what they had learned. So it was a real growing experience. And there were so many times when I realized the impact that this had in terms of empowering students, empowering families. I was at a high school event, and I had organized a speaker. I sat in the back, and there were these 2 boys that were separate from everybody else, and the speaker asked everybody to meet someone new, and these kids didn't move. They were sophomores in high school, and so I moved over to them and started talking. It was very awkward, and then one of them said, "Oh, you're the pillar lady." And then we had a whole conversation about what the speaker had just said. Another example was a sad one where there was a funeral of a child in town, and the group of friends all launched into one of the songs from that program. So I guess my point is that you don't have to necessarily know where you're going, and you can say, I can't do it that way, but I could do it a different way according to your expertise. And then it can feed you for a long time and feed the community even longer. So don't be afraid to dip your toe in. I have never looked back and regretted doing the Pillars of Character program. And by the way, some volunteers from Wakefield, from the Dolbear School, heard that I had done that program, came to me, and then they started the same program in Wakefield at the Dolbear School, and then another person came to me about Burlington. So it was in 3 different schools. I don't know whether those are still going, but don't be afraid. Awesome.
Now, Linda said 2 words during her discussion of pillars. One was trust, building trust, and the other one was information, which leads me to the next question. There's so much misinformation and disinformation out there. And increasingly, it's undermining the trust that we have in our medical and scientific communities and in our whole system. Can you suggest, and I'm going to actually direct this first to Katrina because this is right up her alley, what strategies we can employ to counter these disinformation tactics and rebuild some of the trust?
So I'm going to answer this. In my professional life, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a tech policy advocate, so I'm constantly fighting against big tech to try to pass stronger privacy laws and oversight of social media companies. So I have opinions on this question on misinformation, disinformation. I'm going to answer from 2 perspectives. So one perspective is, as individuals, what can we do? And really, it's about, you have to have the uncomfortable conversations with people you love if they have fallen into this trap of believing misinformation and disinformation. It is very difficult, and hard to do. You're not going to change people's minds necessarily on like certain issues, but you can reinforce what they should be asking when they're reading these articles. What's the evidence? Where is it coming from? And talk about sources that you read. So that's kind of as individuals. Now with my tech policy advocate hat on, I'm going to say that social media companies need to be taking responsibility for their amplification of misinformation and disinformation, right? This is where people get their news now, and they have a responsibility to not be amplifying this false information. Unfortunately, their economic incentive is to keep us online and keep us clicking, and misinformation and disinformation has been shown to be quite popular. In January, Meta announced that, on Facebook and Instagram, they are not going to employ fact checkers anymore to label false content. So I think we need to stand up and say, these are not the social media networks we want. We do not want social media platforms to be full of garbage. We do not want them to be amplifying false information. And we can do that with, the power of our voice as users of these platforms, and we can also tell our elected officials that they should be passing regulations to ensure that social media platforms are not amplifying this type of information.
And also teach your children to be discerning receivers of information. Where is the responsible place to look, what questions to ask, when to be skeptical. Would anyone else like to answer that?
Yes,
Leanna.
and I really want to add to that. I think that we somehow we went through this feeling of not knowing what was true or was a lie during COVID. And I really want to go back to that when we were so afraid to touch the tomato because we thought that we were going to die. I feel that we are right there. So it's really hard to find the light when you don't know who to follow, who's telling you the truth. But we know that in our communities, there's a lot of people doing the work, and doing the work with a lot of respect, and doing the work with a lot of data, and doing the work with a lot of trust, and again, relationships. So who are those people in the community that are already doing the work? Look for that time to connect individually with those people and those families that maybe can amplify the voice of truth. Make people accountable. So what is the school system doing? What is your mayor doing? What is your governor doing? And call them out, right? And at the same time, I think that we have to be very thoughtful about how much we are doing, how much we are posting, how much we are saying, how many opinions are we giving? Because many times opinions are not factual. So I will say, let's find information that is real from real sources, and let's share them so people can start building that trust that right now is not there.
Linda?
So I wanted to share the wisdom of a dear friend who is a child psychiatrist who helps children deal with extreme trauma. She herself lived through multiple camps in the Holocaust, Dr. Anna Ornstein. I had the honor of bringing her to the Reading Public Schools and to Reading multiple times to talk about her story, to address some of the issues that were going in town around anti-Semitism. And one of the things that she drummed into me, because I got to drive her home, so she would test me on the way home and say, Linda, what would you say if someone said X or Y? And my first time I answered, I'd say, well, I'd correct them. I'd say, that's not the truth, this is. And she said, no, because as soon as you do that, you shut down the conversation. She said, you want to engage people in the conversation. So instead, ask them a question. Ask them where they got that idea, what their sources are, why they believe it, what it means to them, why it's important to them. Get into the conversation with them, and then weave information in it. I really, one of the things I knew about Anna was that she, when finishing medical school in Germany, she went from the camps and then lived with a family with a Nazi soldier. So she had to get along in that household. And so that's partially where this strategy approach came from, because as soon as we confront someone and say, no, you're wrong, they're not listening anymore. And so it's really hard to do, I know it is, but she really encouraged to engage the person in conversation. And I have examples of trying to do that, but I don't want to, I know we're tight on time. So, but I just, I really appreciate all of the advice here at the table, and just wanted to sort of add that, because in our everyday experiences, we're going to encounter people that are multifaceted, and they're not all bad just because they support someone that I don't. So there's lots to talk about to make and find common ground and build trust.
Lots of wisdom in those responses. I'm going to change things around a little bit again to a more personal level. I'm sure that all of you in your activism have faced significant challenges at times, and you overcame them. If you could give us briefly an example of something that was a significant challenge and how you managed to get over that.
I can start on that one. I have had the experience of being, speaking of social media and false information, this dovetails very nicely in with the last conversation, is, lots of very negative comments being made on social media, lies about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, what my real intention is, who I am. I've been called a traitor to my country, a child abuser for encouraging pride, a groomer, I was called a paid communist agitator once, which I thought was pretty good. Paid? Tell me more. Anyway, so that's sort of the worst, and how I overcame it, and what I tried. Again, speaking for what Linda said, it's very difficult to not immediately go in and say, I'm actually not getting paid for this. I'm actually not, a communist, but I am. Instead of responding to that, instead responding with, here's what I actually do, here's what I actually believe in. And it's really not for the original poster or the original person who's saying these things, but it's for all the people that are watching, and all the people, I call them the lurkers, all the people that are silently not really engaging with the post, but are actually paying attention. And so instead of defending myself, which is very hard to do, to just post my website and who I am and what I believe in, and and maybe saying something like, I'm sorry that you have a problem with the Pride Parade or whatever. And then I think that, and it really, you're just addressing the other people. You're not really addressing the original poster, because the chances of changing their mind is probably not that great, and you're certainly going to shut them down if you try to defend yourself. So that would be definitely mine.
Another example from one of our panelists? Personal challenges overcome?
So one of my personal challenges, I've had many, because I'd like to say I fight the good fight a lot. I'm a fighter, good trouble, for the most part. I have to say, when I ran for office in 2016, there was a lot of misinformation being shared about me, and as an immigrant woman, Latino, I felt like I was under attack, and I didn't know where people were getting the information. But putting an emphasis on it made it, instead of like ignoring it, I was really stressing over it and trying to defend myself, and that seemed to have gotten the situation worse. And there are times that you can't convince people of what they're going to believe. Similar to what one of you shared, you just can't. As much as you try, sometimes it's close to impossible. Um, so you just have to let people believe what they're going to believe and speak your truth. That's all you can do. I felt that people saw who I was following that campaign, and things changed. So sometimes you just have to be quiet.
In case you didn't know, I'm the head of a cabal that's out to ruin Reading. And that you shouldn't listen to me anymore, you should take action against me. That's what was put on social media and circulated to all the town meeting members. That was after a spate of 36, something like that, swastikas in town, that I was on the school committee for. And the opportunity to have a menorah lighting in Reading, I was asked to organize it by the town manager. I wasn't involved in buying the menorah or anything else, but a whole group of heckling, flag waving, swearing, videotaping people came to the select board meeting accusing the Jews of me and my husband, who was on the select board, of not allowing a Christmas tree on the Reading Town Common. It was a war against Christmas. It was exclusive. And actually, the meeting was to approve having a Christmas tree and an inclusion sign next to the menorah. And the event that I was asked to run was an educational and celebratory one. So being accused of being the head of the cabal and being threatened, yes, we had to get cameras on our house, and the police couldn't do anything about it because it was veiled. I did, and I want to encourage people. We did report it to the police. We reported it to the ADL. We reported it to the DA, and we didn't, but if another incident happened, we would report it to the Attorney General. I go to the anti-hate, anti-bias task force meetings with DA Ryan, and one thing they want us to tell everyone is report what happens. Doesn't have to be a hate crime. If it's a hate incident, more than one can form a pattern, and they want to know about it. And the links are on their websites. So do report when those things happen. It's important. But so how I got through that was I got off of the social media sites except for my own Facebook page, because my own Facebook page enabled me to post who I am, like Laura, and I don't...
Saratine.
I didn't want to mispronounce your name. So that I could still publicize the events that I cared about, and that relationships, people that I've met that I knew wanted to hear about those events could be able to see. But I got off of those other Facebook pages and websites that were tearing me apart, and I knew they were. And friends would tell me, or the people that were tearing me apart would tag me, but I just got off of that and focused on who I am and what I needed to do and who I needed to help.
With challenges like this and so many different issues pulling at us for our attention, how do you stay motivated? And how do you keep encouraging other people? How do you not get totally burnt out with trying?
You want to start? Okay. So, starting with the last question, I think that my field is mental health, and most people in mental health don't look like me. So I really like the idea about when there's no seat at the table, you bring your own chair. And believe me, I have done that many times. And if there's no chair, so I just stand and I open my mouth and I say it. And I think that is so important because when I bring myself into the equation, when I bring my experience, my life, my accent, my color, it's not only about me, but it's about a lot of people behind me. So I really take that, and that is the reason why I'm doing it. Because I know that I'm opening that door not only for the child in me, that many doors were closed, but for those kids that maybe don't have the voice. So maybe that's what keeps me very passionate, is about experiences, right? Like we all have so much to say, so much to do, and when someone says it, then someone else goes, oh, me too. It's kind of when you're out in the classroom and someone asks that question and you go like, oh, thank God they asked. So that's life. And when we think about the power of you, the power of your voice, the power of your experiences, is definitely the magic that brings logic and resources and ideas for other people.
Short. So I just will say this. I kind of answered this in the second question, where it's really just about how do you carve that perfect routine into your life, and that keeps you motivated because you're not getting burnt out. I think that it's really easy to get burnt out. There's so much on fire right now, and it's really hard to imagine, fixing it all, which we're not going to do. So just carve out that little piece, that perfect thing that works for your lifestyle, that issue that it means a lot to you, that will keep you motivated. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't feel like you got to solve it all today.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a big thing, it can be a phone call to your elected official today, or, Bobby Kennedy's Ripple of Hope quote is my favorite quote of all time, and so I try to remind myself, I don't have to do something major, I just do a little thing to make things a little better, or do small action, and that will have ripples.
I just wanted to add the stories of the ancestors, all these amazing, powerful people who came before us. There are so many stories. There are so many beautiful poems and reading. This is what my church services are made of, the stories of the ancestors. That, I think, feeds introverts, and of course for extroverts, it's that feeling of connection that we get when we go to meetings, when we go to church, when we sit by people who have done amazing things, and there's that electricity that feeds us too and keeps us going.
You are not alone.
I think one of the things that keeps me the most inspired is there is a lot of good in the world, and just watching, young children, just children overall, young adults, doing what they're doing. Sometimes they seem more brave than we are and outspoken, and that in itself keeps me inspired. I also feel that we, the women, are often underestimated, and I'm the type of person that encourages you to use that to your advantage. The element of surprise is a powerful thing. So as women, keep planning, don't despair, just organize and get together with like-minded people and just move forward.
People. When I was accused of being the head of the cabal, we had a lot of emails that asked to join the cabal. And that really, it really brought things into perspective. I'm not one that's good at measuring and adhering to my bandwidth. So I'm finding I joined my temple choir. I have started going to Aqua Fitness, where I have found this amazing group of women who laugh and have fun with what they're doing. And we're exercising, so I don't have time to, and following directions, I don't have time to think. I hadn't found those places, those spaces yet, but this year, with the onslaught of news across my phone, I have found I really need to shut that off, and I need to go sing, I need to go exercise. And there's a group, the Mass Human Rights Coalition. It's a state group of like-minded people all running human rights organizations of some kind, and everyone comes virtually now. Second Friday of every month, please come, ask me. I'll give you the connections, the links. But those people feed me. I know they're going through the same things. When Reading was going through the neutering of our Human Relations Advisory Committee, they were there for me. And it was a place to talk, find out what other people had done, and they really literally held me up through a really tough period. So finding, like other people have said, finding those people that are doing similar things that care both about me, you, and the work. It's priceless. It makes a difference, even if you're not in a place to do more of the work at that time. Being part of that group feeds everybody in that group.
Okay. Before we open it up to any questions, I'm going to ask you one last one that's a biggie. If you think there's an action everyone in this room could actually take this week, tomorrow, what do you think that would be to get going?
Get off the script.
Get off the script?
You went off the script.
Oh, okay. I know, I skipped number 7. Okay, I'll tell you what I skipped. There was a question about activism and meeting the needs of marginalized groups. But when you read the biographies that we've written up for these amazing women, you will see that they address those needs through the amazing diversity of organizations they support and issues that they support and work for. So I skipped that question because you already do that and it's in your bios. So I instead went to the call for action question. Is there anything you can suggest here that anyone here could do tomorrow? Volunteer? Join the HRC. We have openings for commissioners. The Human Rights Commission, the group that puts together these programs, Martin Luther King Day, the Hispanic Heritage events, the Indigenous People events. On May 18th, an amazing Asian American event, the Pride event in June, Juneteenth flag raising. We do all of these things because we want people to appreciate other people and understand their differences. So that's my advertisement, actually, but join the HRC or any other town committee. I'm also on the Council on Aging.
This has a slight political bent, but I'm going to feel comfortable that everyone in this room probably would use 5calls.org. It's a resource I've been trying to share with folks. It is this cool website where they have a list of like 35 issues. You can pick the one you care about. They give you a script you can work off of, and they give you the phone number of your elected officials. And it's just like such a quick, easy thing to do. 5calls.org.
That's a great one. 5 Calls is awesome. If you, my group is an Indivisible chapter. I know there's I think it's Melrose and Wakefield chapter. So you're more than welcome to get my email too, because I'm sure they're different. There's no rule, you can be in multiple ones. And maybe if we don't have what you're looking for, they might. So it's a great idea to get on a couple of groups and just see what they do and see what they're doing to try, and like your pro-democracy team, I love that. Any kind of group that you can find out about more actions, and again, find what that learning curve is for you. What is the action style that you have?
I think that we should be looking out of the ordinary. I think that there's so many opportunities that we usually go like, okay, think about your food pantry, right? Like maybe you can do a way to do some, I don't know, activity to have food pantry donated to your closer church or agency. But there's so many things. Like there's an amazing place in Malden. It's called Moms Helping Moms. In this place, they have generally used baby clothes and generally use toys and pregnancy clothing and cribs. So it's like, think about it. Like how many times we have stuff at home that we don't need? How many, like, we know, like especially with babies, we buy so much stuff, and when they are 6 months, it's like, what do we do with this? So we start thinking about what are those things that we know that we have, right? Like start easy. What are those things that we know that we have that we can share? Maybe we can support a grandparent raising a grandchild. Maybe we can be at the library reading a book. Maybe we can actually be I don't know, a mentor for a teenager that is going through a lot, or a pregnant teenager, or a single father. I think that there's so many opportunities, and they don't have to be these massive organizations, but it can be about how can I impact one person? How can I impact that person that is having a really hard time, and believe me, the second one is going to show up, and then the third one is going to show up, and then you're going to find someone who's going to do it with you.
Believe it or not, I was going to say 5 calls and indivisible. But because these brilliant people already took that, I want to add that, we are suffering through an epidemic of loneliness. People are isolated from one another. So, you can do so many little things. Just, go and talk to your neighbor. Look people in the eye. Say good morning. Make human connection.
There's actually initiatives in the town of Wakefield to combat loneliness.
Add a little something, since everything that I was thinking about you've all shared, but I think something as simple as sharing information. Sometimes you know things that other people aren't aware of, and just sharing information, sharing your knowledge, it helps with the misinformation that's out there, especially when it comes to, election ballots, a lot of the issues that we're facing now as a society. It's important for us to share information. It's very simple. Just, if you have a social media platform, of course, you do your fact checks, or just things that you know because of the nature of the work that you do out in the community or as a profession. Share your knowledge.
I was going to say that brunchies. So a new friend and I were talking about loneliness and about the onslaught of information that all of us were having trouble processing and not knowing what to do with all of our feelings. And so we decided in 3 days we were going to get people together, just call women friends. We didn't know each other's friends at all. We were going to call whoever we could think of and say, we're meeting at this restaurant at 11 o'clock. We'll reserve one table. We'll add chairs for whoever shows up. And we got 8 people that showed up. And I met 6 people. And we had a really nice time. And a subset of those people had another event that I couldn't go to. We've shared all our emails and our cell phones so that if we find last minute we can make it, then we call and we do. But just finding ways to support each other that way, it was really, really important.
I'm going to open up. I'm going to grab one of these microphones and see if anyone here has a question.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for being here as a group. Thank you for moderating. Thank you for the panel for being here. Thank you for all the women who are here in celebration of us as women, and some of the men who are here, whether you're here to support others or have to be, we appreciate you. I have a daughter. She is 14, beautiful girl, and I have my stories, you have your stories, and what do you think will be her stories? What do you envision kind of the next generation's challenges are? We talked about the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. We have our challenges. But things have changed, so what do you envision the challenges are for girls now?
You didn't get that question in advance, so think on your feet.
Yeah, so social media. I think we didn't have to deal with that, right? We had a phone, one phone at home that we were fighting for, and we had a TV that usually our parents were controlling. But the pressure that social media brings to this generation is definitely creating a massive disconnection with reality. Just think about how many times we take a picture and we take like 50 to pick one. And this idea of happiness and perfection and achievement, that's not reality. And I think that it's so hard for teens to actually have to fight their reality versus what is perceived to be perfect and beautiful and okay. So that's really hard, that competition, that need to be always connected in knowing what's happening. We didn't have to deal with that. So my heart honestly goes with a lot of the teenagers that are dealing with that requirement of being connected and that idea that perfection is achievable when it's not.
I'll be very brief. I'm an optimist, so weirdly, as much as I totally agree with everything you're saying, I do think that despite the dumpster fire that we're in right now, things are getting better. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, I look back at things that I was very nostalgic about, and I'm horrified by, movies like Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles. I'm like, oh my God, what were we thinking? And that would never fly today, and that's good. So I do think there's ultimately a hopeful bent to that. Not that that's not a challenge, and there's plenty of other things that are going on. But I do think ultimately there is an arc of hope there that I cling to desperately with white knuckles.
I just wanted to add something about the technology. At that Good Fight Toolkit conference, the Attorney General talked about a Project Safe Childhood, where they have lawsuits against TikTok and Meta because they consider it a company's responsibility, and you were mentioning this, company's responsibility to keep children safe. So, for example, preventing the impact of negative imagery. They also are working on a youth advisory council. And that council were the initiators of the no cell phones in school that I noticed on the front page of our local newspaper was going to be a discussion of our school committee. So I think, and I hope, that one thing our kids are going to get, our girls are going to get from us are role models on how to speak out their truth and how to not just accept the negative and work for something better. I don't think that we've been able to sit back and just say, okay, we'll get what we need. And I think they're watching, and you're here. So my assumption is they're watching a role model who is acting in her best interest. And that's what my parents did, as I said in the beginning. And I think that's really important. And I wouldn't underestimate the power of the community that you build around your girls to empower them. When I was told to sit down at the select board meeting because my husband had the voice, I didn't give up my voice. I just showed up during public comment and I gave my spiels. I think our kids see that, and it won't be easy, but they're learning the skills by watching us.
I wanted to answer that question. Okay. So I feel you. I'm also raising a teenager, I think one of my major concern for this generation is preserving their rights. It's one of the things that I advocate for. And, you know, I think, as you mentioned, leading by example and what they see within their household, but I also feel like it's important to expose them to something outside of this community, because the reality of the world outside of this community looks different. So to be able to kind of expose them to something that will help develop leadership within them, confidence, I think that's one of the things that has helped my children. They've been going to board meetings since they were little. I had no choice but to bring them with me, which, you know, ended up working to their advantage, because they've learned of a lot of the work that I do in communities that are not as privileged as our community. And, you know, because sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And there are times that I see young girls that really don't realize that there are children that are suffering and living in worse condition, and they make the biggest deal out of smaller things, and I don't know how to address it other than action, taking them where they can see that. So that would be one of my advice. Communication as well.
Perspective. Okay.
I just want to say that I was a teenager in the 50s and then in college in the 60s, where it was completely different. But it was a fascinating time because of music, creativity. The Vietnam War was horrible. I mean, the whole thing. We went through it, then the everything. But for women now, it's still going on. I'm amazing person. I do this, you know, stuff on my face. You look on TV, on anything on TV, those long nails, the stupidness of just what they look like. You know, and these girls find that, and well, I have 2 grandchildren, 9, 10, and 7. They've got a good grandmother. I say, get off of that. That is not what women really look like in the house, you know. I think you need grandparents, grandmothers, fathers. Fathers really need to be good. So, and I worked in my whole life with mental illness, but here you go.
Thank you. Dennis Clarity, 1 Harvest Road in Wakefield. It's not just women that are afraid to walk around the street at night. It's men too. And you have 3 million untreated drug addicts. You know, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, the fentanyl is, you hear about fentanyl coming in from Mexico and Canada. If you treated these people, these drug addicts, you wouldn't have to be fearing to walk around the street at night. Thank you.
Okay. It seems that we are now at 8 o'clock, and we have refreshments for you in the cafeteria. Okay. I would like to thank, first of all, let's give a big round of applause for Ian and his team at WCAT for all they do for us. They're wonderful. And for those who weren't here who may not have caught the simulcast, they are creating a YouTube video, and we will distribute that link in the coming week. So, was this an incredible panel of women? Each year I say, how can we outdo ourselves? Thank you. You've really been inspiring. And even to someone who is active, you taught me a lot more that I could do. I hope this will inspire you as well.